So what have we got going on today, dear?
Well, what we're going to show in this episode of Talking Hands is we're going to make 3 ear wires.
Great.
Show you 3 different earring designs. You can see we're going to make the basic shepherd's hook ear wire. We're going to make the shepherd's hook with a bead. And then we're going to make a special ear wire here that I call a stays-on ear wire because it's a little modification to the shepherd's hook.
So you said stays on so that it stays in your ear and doesn't fall out.
Exactly.
Got it.
Exactly.
And then what's this fourth one with the blue?
Well, it's just a repeat of the shepherd's
Oh,
hook.
okay.
And in the blue color, it may show up a little better on the video. So the first step in making any of these ear wires is to make an eye loop in the end of a piece of wire about 5 inches long.
And we've got a video on that for new people that are new to wire work.
Yeah, the loops video will show you how to make an eye loop. So you start with an eye loop, and the eye loop wants to be the size of the peg for the jig you're using.
And so that relates to the step jaws.
Well, we use the step jaws in order to make
so
those
you use the top, which one are you using?
I use the first step.
Okay, the smallest loop.
Yeah. So also for making ear wires, you always want to use 20 gauge or 21 gauge wire. You don't want to use 22, you don't want to use 18, so 20 or 21
and
gauge
the reason
wire.
Is?
First of all,
18 and 20, what's wrong with them?
18 is too big and it's uncomfortable for the wearers. This is the size of the standard ear wire that everyone is comfortable with.
Oh, got it.
Okay. So first we're going to make the regular shepherd's hook ear wire, just like that. And we start with the piece of wire 5 inches straight, eye loop at the bottom. Now we're going to grip the wire immediately above the eye loop and bend it 90 degrees, like that. And then we're going to use this pattern on our WigJig tool.
You know, there's one thing I think we better comment on. When you said you use the smallest step on the step jaw pliers, that means then it has to be used on the jig like the Delphi.
Exactly.
You can't use it on the Olympus. Then.
Right, I'm using the Centaur here, which has the
They're
same...
smaller pegs.
Right. So as you can see, I put my loop on this peg. I put the right angle bend up against the super peg, and now I'm just pushing it around the super peg.
And this is a Centaur?
This is a Centaur.
But you could do it on a Delphi.
You could do it on any of our jigs. This pattern you can make on any of our jigs.
But I mean the smaller size would be on the Delphi or the Centaur.
Yes, it would be. So put the loop on there, make the right angle bend there. It bends around the super peg, and then you bend it back against this peg at the bottom, and you take it off your jig. Now when you take it off your jig, you'll notice that it is pretty three-dimensional. It's certainly not ready for prime time. The first thing we're going to want to do is cut the excess wire.
With the flat edge towards the piece.
Yes, with the flat edge towards the piece, and for an ear wire that's particularly important. The second thing we're going to do is we're going to kind of squeeze this so it goes into one plane. We can do that either with our chain nose pliers, or we can use our nylon jaw pliers here.
And that's what I prefer.
And now it's starting to look like
an ear wire.
A regular ear wire.
And that's hardening the wire a little bit.
A little bit, but for an ear wire, you can see that it's still soft and it would push out of shape if we were to stop right now. So one of the steps that we need to do for an ear wire is we're going to have to hammer the rounded portion so that it's harder.
And holds its shape, locks in the shape.
Now, we have a video on hardening, and we show this in greater detail, so we're not going to talk a lot about hammering to harden it. But as you can see, we've hammered the ear wire, that hardens it, that helps turn the rounded portion into an I-beam, and it makes it a lot stronger. And then the final step in making an ear wire is to use the cup burr tool.
What is that tool?
It's
got little things inside a cup, right?
Yes, exactly. And it fits on the end of the wire, and it's made to work on 20 and 21 gauge wire. And you just put it on the end, and you can see how I'm spinning it. We'll have another video on using the cup burr later, but you want to use the cup burr for about 30 seconds to round the end of the ear wire.
So that it doesn't poke you. The whole purpose is to avoid it poking you, right?
Exactly. you want to remove the burrs.
Yeah, it smooths the end of the wire.
Exactly.
Inside the cup.
So that's how we make a shepherd's hook ear wire. Now, the second one I'm going to make, and I didn't thread this bead on there before. I didn't get 100% ready here. So again, we start with the bead. Now we're going to bend the wire again 90 degrees right above the bead. So I'm just going to grip it with my pliers right above the bead and bend it 90 degrees like that. And I want to use my pliers that have the thinnest tips, so I want that distance above the bead to be as small as possible. Now, I put the wire on the peg. The pattern is slightly different to allow me the room for the bead, and you can see how it goes.
So when you say the pattern's slightly different, you mean the peg is a little bit further away from the super peg?
Exactly. It's
Yeah,
a
there's
little bit
greater
further
distance.
away.
There's greater distance between this and this.
Exactly.
Okay.
So put the wire on. Then the rest of the steps are identical. I just bend it around like this. I want to push it a little beyond so that when it relaxes right back against that peg, and then bend it back like that. And you know, it comes off looking like this. I'm going to cut the excess wire. And then we go through the same process. I need to, you know, police it up so that it becomes all in one plane. Now, next step would be to hammer, and I'm not going to show that again on this. And then the final step is to use the cupper tool to remove the burrs from the end. Now, one thing I will tell you is that when you do hammer this, what you'll find is that quite often it'll open the wire out. And if that happens, all you need to do to repair it is just you can put it back on the jig with your fingers like this and give it a little squeeze, and you can get, you know, this angle to be exactly what you want it to be. Obviously, when you make a pair, you want both of these to be the same angle and identical. One of the things about adding the bead to your ear wire is if you're making your own earrings, and especially if you're selling your own earrings, the bead says that this is a custom-made ear wire, and you use a bead that matches your earrings, matches the beads in your earrings, and it really sets your pieces off as handmade and something special.
Oh, nice.
and not vanilla.
Right.
Now, what I would really tell people is if you want to make your own ear wires, you should make the stays-on ear wire here, because especially if you're selling earrings, this will help differentiate your earrings from everybody else's. This is not something that's out there commonly available, and so we'll show you how to make the stays-on.
That's a great idea. And this is the sample that you got out here is in sterling, right?
It's in actually silver-plated.
Oh, silver-plated wire,
Yeah.
or artistic wire.
Yes.
Ah.
So
I love that.
again, we're going to bend it immediately above the bead 90 degrees, just like that. Same steps as we started with. Start with the eye loop, add the bead, bend the wire immediately above. Uses exactly the same pattern here as we used for the earlier one. Put your loop on the peg, and then we want to wrap the wire around the peg until this piece is perpendicular to the start. So we end up with it looking like this. So now I need to police it up so that it's all in one plane. And all I'm going to do is give it a little bend like that. And then we start the stays-on process. And what we do
at
here,
the curve.
at the top of the curve, you just bend it up. Now, you want to grip it with your chain nose pliers at a point where the chain nose pliers is about an 1/8 of an inch thick, and you're going to make a 90-degree bend, like that.
Show that better, because I wasn't sure what you did.
Grip it, at a point where your chain nose pliers is about 1/8 of an inch thick and make a 90-degree bend.
Oh, I see.
Okay, and now you want to grip it at a point where your chain nose pliers are about roughly 1/4 of an inch.
Twice as long.
Yeah, 3/16 of an inch thick maybe, and then you want to bend it down 90
Great.
degrees. So let's see if we can show you that. Bending it down 90 degrees.
I see. You went up, over, and down.
Yeah, and now you go back to where you bent it in the first place, where it's about 1/8 of an inch thick, and you're going to bend it out just a little bit. So you can see that.
So you're doing this portion of it right in here.
Exactly, by hand.
Got it.
And so now we've got that basic shape done. And
Show that a little bit more so that's clear. Okay.
at this point, you make this final bend here just by hand using your chain nose pliers, and then you cut it about 1/4 of an inch from the end. So it ends up looking like that. Now you can do some hand finishing with this if you want, and to make these angles a little better, that's your choice. Obviously you do want to hammer this, and when you have the bead on an ear wire and you're hammering it, that's where it's good to have an anvil so that the bead can be off of the anvil. You see in this position.
So you don't break the bead.
So you won't break the bead. And so you hammer very carefully to harden it, and then the final step again is to use the cut burr tool.
But when you say you hammer, I'd like you to point out the area that you hammer.
Okay.
You don't have to do it, but where are you hammering? Oh, right in there?
Yes, we'll just do a little hammer.
Okay. Doing all the curves and the turns.
All the curves and the turns.
Okay.
You know, it's a good idea to hammer on both sides. And when you do hammer, that's going to cause this angle to open up some. So, you know, if you want it to close down, you know, you can do that just with your pliers.
Okay, so there you've done it.
So that's our 3 different shepherd's hook with the bead. And for everyone, this is really, especially if you're making your own ear wires and you're going to the trouble of making them, we really recommend that you make the stays-on ear wire because it differentiates your jewelry, and it solves the problem that a lot of people have with their earring getting caught in their hair and coming off their ear.
Good idea. Thanks, dear. Thank you.
You're welcome.